I'm Randall Franks, as Morris said, and Joe and I served together on the city council. I was his vice mayor as well as a city council member. But 10 years before that, I basically reported. I was government reporter for Catoosa County, so I reported on Joe and whatever the council was doing for all the people in the city. And Joe came to me about 2 years ago and said he needed some help with something. And so you want to pick it up from there, Joe?
Yes, I will. Randall and I, was on the council together. And we didn't always agree on what was going on in Ringgold, but we was always friends and got a lot done for the taxpayers of Ringgold. It wasn't, we didn't feud over something, we just had different opinions. And that's the way I think government usually is. So even the back of this book, that picture top left, I wrote an article for the paper Catoosa County use. I was the depot scales, the torsion bars was broke. I was brazing those back together, and that's what he took that picture and would put in the Catoosa County use. So there's a lot of things that we did cross and help the people of Ringgold.
You wanted to share a little bit initially about your growing up in North Carolina.
My ancestors come here from Germany in the 17th century. And Randall did a lot of research as even to what ship they come on and town, which I did not know. But after they come here, they first settled in Pennsylvania, then North Carolina. Rowan County is where I was raised at. It's about the middle of the state, 40 miles north of Charlotte, 125 miles east of Asheville. It was a farming section at that time, and I was raised on a farm 8 miles west of Salisbury. The main thing we raised was cotton, sweet potatoes, and wheat. People looked down on some people about picking cotton. We didn't know no better, we picked cotton. And in high school, they would let the schools out half a day for about 5 weeks and let us get home and get picking more cotton. So it was just, and pulling tobacco in August, seemed like you was working 13 months a year. There was always something that had to be done. And at that time, farming was just plain hard work. And I didn't like going to school, but I knew the only way I could get off the farm was to go to school somewhere. So that's where I started off in school. The county I raised in, Rowan, it had about 9 high schools, none very big. I went to school. I remember in the 8th grade we had 80, and by the time we finished in 48, there was only 20 of us that finished. 4 dropped back from classes above me. And some had to go to work or whatever and didn't finish. But I remember one boy dropped out, and years ago, I saw in the paper, hired Plyler was a friend of mine. He got killed in Korea. I could have easily been there with him. They were drafting people my age, and a whole lot at that time. Now,
And where did you go to college, Joe?
after high school, I did go to North Carolina State for 5 quarters, and I wasn't doing that good because I didn't have a lot of subjects in high school that most schools had. So my advisor told me about Southern Tech. It was a 2-year school in Atlanta area, had the same board of directors as Georgia Tech, but it was more not deep in theory as Georgia Tech. The classes was more is what you would use in a job. Most of our teachers had worked in some profession before starting teaching. I remember Mr. Horner was over the electrical department, which I graduated in. He had worked for Georgia Power for several years before he come. So what he taught was something was really realistic is what you would face probably when you went to work. So it was a good school.
Now, Southern Tech is, for those of you who don't know, it's in the Chandler area. It was on the old Naval Air Station, which was formerly Fort Gordon in World War I there.
Yeah, after leaving North Carolina State, there was 6 months before I enrolled in the fall at Southern Tech. That 6 months, the state, I made a week kind of tobacco allotments. It was a production market administration. What they said, the government set up programs for farmers to limit production to keep prices up on commodities rather than having excess amount of whatever. So in that time, I made enough to pay my tuition, the 2 years at Southern Tech. The tuition back then was only $124 a quarter, and that was out of state tuition. I think in-state tuition was like $64 a quarter. So it didn't take a whole lot of money then to go to school. And after finishing, I had, there was, companies would post, they were looking for someone to hire, and I saw where Combustion was having some representatives come in, possibly interview some of it to go work for them. And I remember Lorraine Wall from the Metallurgical Research Lab, and Edwards from personnel came down, and Digby White lived here in Ringgold. Brian White's daddy and Stansel, the 3 of us, they offered to come to Chattanooga and look at the plant and offer us a job. Digby and I come, but Stansel did. He was from Atlanta area, and when from that interview, they offered me a job, and everybody else was saying, "What's your draft situation?" They said, I said, "I've been deferred to go to school." "Well, you're going to be drafted. We're not even going to offer you a job." And so the question will get you deferment. They did for a couple months, but I ended up with, in November the 10th, I would have been 52. I would have been drafted. I joined 4 days before I'd have been drafted. I knew I was going to be lady over in North Carolina. She told me, said, when I got back from Charlotte and physical, if you walked your path, they didn't turn down out of 125, maybe 5. But so anyway, I went to, I found out about the Army's security agency. Sergeant Evans told me about it, and it was the top 4% of service, which I didn't know. But he says 2 things. We've never had a casualty in the agency, and if you ever run for public office, it'll help you. I said, sir, that's the last thing I'll ever do. But I was wrong on it. So after school, in the agency, I was sent the last 2 years, up to 3, I had to join for, and sent to the Philippines. We were having the French and China for intelligence. We knew what the enemy was doing, and we would have it to let the French know. The UN would go around to inspect the prison camps of the French soldiers, and they never could find them. They had moved the prisoners a day or 2 before. We knew where they were and where they went to within 10 feet of them. But so I don't think they wanted to find them, because we were definitely telling them where they were at. So they treated us good, and while I was there, we worked 7 days, and 2 off and swing shift first, second, third, and the off days some of my friends, we would go sightseeing, and there were some pretty places in the Philippines I enjoyed seeing. So from that,
Why don't we get you back to Catoosa County, Joe? 'Cause,
okay.
how did you originally get to Catoosa County? You came with Digby, didn't you?
But one thing, the second year I was there, Barbara and I had gone together before I went overseas. And I never had asked her to marry me before I left, but I went to something that nobody over done. I went to PA and bought a set of rings and mailed them to her and asked her to marry me halfway around the world. She kept them, and so that's how we got started off. So now when I got out of the Army, I went back to combustion, and but I got out 3 weeks early, and we got married on the 6th of November, the same day, 3 years earlier when I joined the Army. I said, I didn't know which was the good day and the bad day. But I know that the bad day when I had to go in the Army. When I went back to combustion, they gave me a job back in the metallurgical research lab, which was corporate metallurgy for all divisions of combustion. We had divisions in Calgary, Canada, even in Sweden, in Oklahoma, and Ventura, California. So I was sent to all of these at one time or another on some of their problems in women. And then,
Joe, what was it you were doing for combustion when you were sent around the world? What were you doing for combustion? Tell me.
to start off, I had an associate degree in electrical engineering, and then I went to night school while working in combustion and earned a BS degree in engineering physics. And I worked, I only had one welding class at night school, and I talked to the professor what I was doing at work, and he says, if you want to come to class, you don't have to come to the last day and take the test. And so I was working with the welding development and equipment design. I told him one of the things I was doing in experimental welding, and he said, come and take the test. I took the final and made an A on it. And that was the only class in welding. But thanks so much in welding design, some of the things I did, we used to clad reactors. You had to clad them with stainless steel to keep them from rusting. A vessel for coal-fired, not radioactive, you could use water chemistry to stop the rust. You can't use that in a nuclear vessel, is why you clad it with stainless. And so we use a wire process to clad. When I first got there, I worked on improving that. And then in summer of '60, I went back in '56. Summer of '60, I went to Italy. Combustion Solomon blueprint to build the first nuclear power plant in Italy. I was sent there to help them with their planning of their vessels. The Italian doing the work, the German furnished the equipment, and I was trying to tell both of them what to do. None of us could speak the other language, but they showed no resentment from the war. Only one, the Italian never got her to do anything. So the German put his hand up to his head like he was going to shoot the Italians, even though they fought together during the war. In the strip cladding later, we used a stainless strip in place of wire. The strip I used was 4 inches wide, 25,000 thick, like that piece of paper flat. And you could cover 40 square inches a minute with that versus 8 square inches a minute with the wire. The wire, you had a lot of repair in the well. There was zero repair in the strip. And you could, only downtime was putting another roll of 1,200 pound of strip on about 94% of our time. I made others to use the heads with 2 inch wide and the slopes and was 1 inch wide. So but I made equipment to all of these wells, and with that it was so much faster. I got an award for 1979 for the person in Chattanooga Division that done the most for success for that division of 5,600 people. So I just had a BS degree. We had a lot of master's degrees and doctor's degrees in engineering. I got that award over all of them because it was saved the company so much money in doing those.
Joe, how many patents did you develop for combustion?
I got 10 U.S. patents for these different development I've done. And from those 10 U.S. patents, I got over 75 foreign patents from the 10 U.S. patents. See, to hold a patent, for example, in Japan, which I had 4 patents in Japan, but the Japanese combustion had to pay Japan $25,000 a year to hold that patent in their country. But it was like swapping money. Combustion, in my opinion, messed up. We sold licensees to foreign countries for technical information. And so they could see any of our procedures, and they could, with cheap labor, they could underbid us on new reactors or whatever. But so they paid combustion a lot of money for those that information. And so it's swapping money from patent to the other.
Tell them about your China trip.
In '84, combustion sold China equipment and the pictures in the book of welding border tubes together with an automatic MIG process. And China was following our management. They put in the contract, you'd make 10 perfect consecutive welds before they paid 1 cent for over $1 million worth of equipment. And the day our management signed it, I or nobody at combustion could make 1 perfect weld, much less 10 consecutive. And so I was in a meeting in January after in 84, and about 25 top engineers out of Chattanooga and Windsor main office of combustion. My boss, Ted Ward, and Dr. Chronicle, the director of our lab, all said it can't be done. I was sitting there talking to Bill Allen, a good friend. He graduated from Tennessee Tech, really a smart man and easy to work with. I said, Bill, I can make this thing work. He said, can you? I said, yeah, I can make it work. He said, he stopped the meeting and said, we got mixed opinion. Joe thinks he can make it work, and let him get over and start working on it. 3 weeks later, I did make good weld all day long. And so I went to China the last of February, and I had to stop in Japan because the blueprints we turned it over to a Japanese country to make the equipment. And so one of their engineers, by contract, had to go with me. I didn't need him, I didn't want him, but he was friendly. And so when we got there, we worked 6 days and off one. We was off on Saturday. That Sunday evening, first weld I made, I messed up. My settings wasn't right. And the second weld, the weld was perfect. I thought, I ain't gonna be here long. But every weld I made that Monday got worse. And you can't see in the art ionization. That magnetic field was setting up and causing that arc to deflect. And so I checked my ground cables, and I found where it's supposed to be insulated, but the micarta had a hole drilled and the stud screwed through it and shorted out. The current was flowing through that machine truck, and the current flowing through it will build up that chuck as a magnet from current flow. So I corrected it and took the chuck apart and demagnetized every piece, every bolt, every part. And it's not in the book, but you can demagnetize something with DC. You normally use AC as a collapsing field, but you can put a part in that pole, and as you move it, that movement is a collapsing field, and it'll demagnetize the parts, and that's what I've done.
Joe, let me ask you something. Is that just a manual arc welding? Is that what you're talking about?
So,
Arc welding? Just hold the welding implement in your hand and do arc welding? Is that what
it was a water carrying that occurred as a manual weld. Gas metal arc weld is what it was. And, but when I was getting ready to go, we had one man come over here after the war from Germany, Eric Warner. He would come to me, he says, "Oh, Joe, statistics, you can't do anything 10 consecutive times. It can't be done." And we become friends, even though he was during the war. He was a fighter pilot for Hitler during World War II. So I've met all kind of people one time or another, but if you get the dictators out of the way, most people I have met I could get along with. But so anyway, shortly after, there was many other troubles. One, the transistors, it was cold. It was 15 below at night, and the old boiler shop, the windows were broke out, air blowing through. They'd washed the floor down, a little bit of concrete. There was ice on the floor where it was working, and that was affected. I put a strip heater on the welding machine, put the cardboard box back over it, and so it would stay warm, transistor worked. And when I told him I wanted later, I wanted to make tests. We don't have an inspector here. I thought you control every man here. But they wouldn't let me make it. A couple of days later, they said, "You make tests today." They sabotaged the equipment that night, and it took me a couple of days to find what they messed up. And I didn't dare accuse them of doing it because they controlled everything. It was one country, communism. They ruled everything you did. You didn't yourself. And they could have easily said, "Test failed, go home," and wouldn't give me a chance to make it. So, but got everything working, and I told them I want to make tests. Okay, take the cover off, take the heater off before you do anything. I was lucky it warmed up a little bit, and it worked without the heater under it and the cover over it. But they didn't want that thing to work. They did everything out. Even the well wire, the 35,000 wire copper coated, it was rusty, and one roll was cast was real bad. And here I would throw both of them in the garbage can. I would not have used either one of those wires, but that's all they would give me to use. They want me, again, to fail because of the wire. So, believe me, but it did pass, and I never crossed them at one time. the interpreter, she could speak English better than I could. She wrote a bunch of stuff, and I read it. I looked at her, I said, ma'am, what you wrote is just plain lies. He shocked her, because that's the first time I ever said anything against him. And I said, let me write what I think, and I did. And we unofficially signed the acceptance. About dinner time, at lunch, we went back and ate, and I told her they wanted to make some bin tests, which wasn't necessary, but I didn't argue with them. And 1 out of 4 broke, test failed. I said, you didn't heat treat it, it's brittle fracture. And we got back, the director, he got up and said, first thing he said, that failed, because that broke because of brittle fracture. The chain of command in the company, only the top man was allowed to say anything that meant anything at all. The others that they knew, they wasn't allowed to say. And so, quickly, I recognized that right quick. But I say one thing for the director, sometimes the welding engineer would go get him and he'd come down. He was always laughing, jolly, and the welding engineer, when that director laughed, that welding engineer laughed. The other days we shake hands, he never showed any emotion whatsoever. But he knew he's better follow orders. He's better than that. But my mother passed away while I was over there, the 20th of February, and Pete Hackett called me. It took him about 12 hours to get a call through, but he got Jesse's phone number, room number. He told him when we got to work at 7, what happened. Within an hour, the director came down to express sympathy of my mother passing. He was very sincere. He said there's a lot of things worse than death, and he went on to explain. Even in the communist system, he had some feeling to him more than the plain communist. So,
Joe, we better, we're about to run out of time, so we better get you back over to Catoosa County now. So you got the welds done, you did the 10, combustion got paid. So let's talk about Catoosa County a bit. How did you and Barbara meet?
Well, when I first went back to, when I went to combustion, I was riding to work with Mr. Sheriff. He, I think he was school superintendent at one time, but he went to work at combustion. And Barbara and I both, and Ms. Myers, rode to work with him. And so I was riding with her, and that's when I first met her. And I shortly started, I finally got a date with her, and we started going together before I went overseas in the Army. So that's when I told you, I ended up sending her rings a year later, and we married when I got back.
That's how you wound up in Ringgold, was Barbara was here. And of course, because you could have lived anywhere around Chattanooga, but Digby brought you here, you met Barbara, you came back. Now, it was over a decade until you decided to throw your hat in the ring and start running for alderman. What was it that Barbara and her mother said when you said you were going to run for alderman?
I think it's a matter of her mater. We're going to vote against you. Betty Clark was mayor at the time, and Betty and Joanne was Betty's sister. Barbara finished high school, they were good friends. Betty taught me in running for council, And so I ran and got those folks the first for 4 years, and the second time 4 more, and then I ran for mayor. But we had hard Ralph Ray. Watson wanted to go to the water plant. He had heart problems, so he would have less stress. And we let him and hired Ralph Ray. Well, meantime, Watson wanted his job back as clerk, and he said, if you agree to fire Ralph Ray, you won't have no trouble being elected. I said, I won't agree to that. And I only won by 3 votes. Watson just about beat me for mayor the first time. And after that, I got at least 2/3 of the votes every time I run for mayor. But it was all over people wanting their job back. So sometimes it's too much under the scene that you don't know about.
There's a lot that goes on, obviously, behind the scenes. You became mayor in 1976, or that's same time as Jimmy Carter ran for president. And all those years, Joe, that you served, your focus was saving the taxpayers and the city money. So that's what you were talking about initially, is some of the different things that you did. But a lot of what we cover in the book is what the council and mayor did all those years. There's from 1967, you can go through the book and you can look up and see what Joe and the council did in 67, all the way up to when he left the council in 2015. So.
We were fortunate to get some grants at different times. One of the grants we got was at the depot, the outside landscape and the inside, some flooring. And doing that, we put a new 3/4 inch wood on the floor, and shortly, and the lights, Ross Andrews, architect, he put light bulbs real strong and on those beams, and it made them pretty warm. And I noticed on the floor there was beetle dust. And so Charles Lancaster, Extension Service, asked him to come look at it with me, and he sent a piece to the University of Georgia, and they checked it, and there was beetles in that wood, and when they got warm, they hatched out, and it was like termites. The pieces that were 3.5 by 7.5, the cross pieces, like termites, eat up. And so Jack Babb he saw me selling pressure treated them, and they didn't sand them, and they looked like the original. We replaced them. But 2 people that we got the grant from, they happened to come in when I was doing this, and they said, you got bad trouble. It'll take $100,000 or $200,000 to exterminate this building. And so Nathan Perry was putting the floor down. I got him to put these beams in, and we didn't go no further. Moved the lights off, no more beetles left. So we didn't have to spend any $200,000 on that building. So there's stuff like this, right quick, there was different places. The old Federal Bridge, the telephone company had fiber optics, and they told us they would have to cut and splice those to get the fiber optics out of the way of the new bridge. In doing it, it was $135,000. I took a coat hanger, the line come over, up 4 feet, over and back down. I said, just twist them over 9 degrees, you don't have to cut them. And the contractor of the bridge, he said, I'll just pivot and won't charge you nothing. And the gas company, the lines under the casing, under the road on the east side, they wanted $80,000 to extend those casings. The actual cost would have been about $3,500 all it would have been. And I met with them and the highway department and showed them didn't need it. And I said, the city's gonna have to pay that 80. And the transportation department, they said, oh, we thought the highway department was gonna have to pay. We ended up didn't pay nobody nothing. So overall, we saved about $237,000 on stuff we didn't need to do. So stuff like this, when we moved in City Hall, our City Hall cost us $1.8 million. And the day we moved in, with the help of the council, we didn't own nothing on that building. We still had about $1 million in the bank because we watched what we spent and we didn't waste money. One more thing. One day I was working with, after I come back from China, Bill Allen said before I left, he said, when you get back, I want you to go to work for me. He said, I want one person with a positive attitude to work for me. I don't have an opening now, but when you get back, I will have an opening. About a month after I got back, I finally agreed to go to work for him. But in doing that, I worked mainly in not much development, but some, but with the workers. And one of the welders, one day, he said, you know why you get so much done? You're one of us. I would talk to them and not, if they messed up, I never would downplay them. I would help them, and they appreciate it. And I've tried to be one of them, and you can get more done for your city or whatever if you work with people.
Joe, what was the biggest problem that you had? What did you think the biggest problem that you solved with the city of Ringgold? You got the water, the sewer.
One of the biggest problems is the flooding of the stores downtown. I saw where I could divert water from the side of the mountain, about 60 acres or more, and go to the next draw and hit the railroad where the crossing is, and the water would flow north up the railroad and not come through the stores. And so the other drain downtown, and also the highway department put another tile close to where the Land Levitt lived, and where it would catch the water and go through a drain under the railroad parallel with the one under the railroad there, the street. And so the combination, we haven't had any more flooding of downtown. But so much of the time, it was simple things that made things work. But if you work with people, most people will work with you. And I couldn't have got near as much done if I hadn't.
One of the greatest challenges, Joe, a lot of folks, if you've never served in an elected position or even just on a committee, of course, you've got to get 3 people to agree on something before you can go forward with it. But in reviewing the minutes from the council, and that's that Joe and I talked about the key things that he wanted to cover, and then I went to City Hall, and I started in 1966, and I read everything that happened in the record of the city from 1966 to 2015. Now, I knew a lot of it the last few years that we served together from memory, but what you learn is every problem that we have today is the same problem they had 50 years ago. Nothing changes, just the names. The business owners have the same problems. The residents have the same problems. The only thing that changes is the location and the names. And that's what I saw time and time again with each council, is this council handled a problem. Well, 10 years later, the council handled the same problem. It's just, a lot of times things change, and I think that's one thing with Joe being in there 50 years, he saw the same thing again and again and again, so he could go back and say, well, that didn't work last time. Let's do it this way.
There's one other thing in the book on page 409, 410, it gives a description of many things I did at combustion. It was quite a bit expensive. One, when we did I would check which person with the, when they would get contracts, and I would figure how much strip we needed for each width, and we bought a strip from Cyclops. Paul Shepard out of Atlanta, salesman, he'd come to the lab and we'd sit down and have coffee. I'd tell him how much strip we needed of each side, how many pounds, like 100,000 pounds of strip. And then he'd take my list and go to our purchasing and say, look, I want an order for this much strip. I was doing a purchasing job, but I knew what they needed in purchasing. They were smart, but wouldn't get out there and see what was going on in production. And so that's what was happening so many times, like Bill,
Bill, you think about Bill
but
Taylor?
anyway, one of them, he was the mayor of Brosville, Bill North, and he got a job as a foreman, and he didn't have any experience in it, but if he got in trouble, he called me, and he told me down GMA meeting in Savannah, I made him look like the best foreman over there. If he got in trouble, he called me, and I'd do his work, I'd talk to his people, and he'd stay out of the way. So it's all work with his people, and no matter where you go, that's what we all need to do, and not feud over things that don't really matter.
And a lot of time is spent in government on things that don't really matter, unfortunately, to accomplish the things that do really matter. Joe, we probably should bring things to a close, and I just want to say, if you look at the front of the book, I think one of the greatest accomplishments that Joe gave us is pictured on the front of this book. It's the drawing of the Ringgold City Hall. That's, I think, a testament to his many years of trying to make something Ringgoldians could be proud of in downtown Ringgold. And that bronze of him that's in front of, this is a drawing that Ross Andrews drew. Many of you know this was the original mock-up of what the City Hall was going to look like. This bronze, before Joe retired in 2015, I arranged for the city to put together a plaque honoring his service, and we put it at the depot, and that's what this bronze is from. And so this is how I created the cover, is the combination of all this artwork, the picture we took back when we were doing the article for the news, and 2 years worth of writing.
Right.
Well,
this book, when I asked Randall to help me, I like to think I'm a fair engineer, but I'm not a writer. And Randall designed all of this, in which I wasn't capable of doing. And so I don't think any of us are smart enough to know everything. We may be good at one, not another. So we need to do what best we can. The other thing, right quick, the star and cross on the mountain, I designed it out of stainless steel rods and switch arrangements. It'll be a star Christmas and a cross for Easter. And you can see it long, long ways. Was up at the depot, the flower beds on the south side, I was wanting to put those 12-inch blocks tied to the railroad bottom at a curve, and the prisoners were doing the work for me. And after this one, I scratched on the ground and draw it on paper. I said, if it takes you all day to put that first row in, time don't matter. He looked up at me and said, yes, I got 14 years. He had a good attitude, and he did a good job for us. So, but the prisoners and the flags, these boxes I made to put the flags in, some of the volunteers put a few in, but I saw the prisoners wasn't, the tornado wasn't busy all the time. I talked to the warden, the guard, and he checked with the warden, could they make some for me? And the warden gave them permission. And so, at times, they were doing a good job, like over and down a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And man, they worked like crazy. And when the other employees was working on the building, their primary job, they couldn't get the president to do nothing for them. I didn't tell them if you'd buy them a little chicken, and you'd get help too. So maybe I did use bribery, but it works.
Yeah.
But
Joe?
you need to treat people, even though they're prisoners, you need to treat them with some respect, and I try to.
So I think that should probably bring us to a close. The only other thing I know you wanted to say was something about when you were in school, you failed physics.
In high school, I didn't have any physics. I did have chemistry, a good teacher. I had no trouble passing chemistry in college, but physics I did, and I failed it. And my advisor told me, you flunked out of school. And that's when he told me about Southern Tech. So sometimes a failure is a blessing in disguise. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be in Ringgold today. Because I wouldn't have been at Southern Tech, I wouldn't have been at university, and I'd still be somewhere in North Carolina.
Picking cotton.
We're glad you're here.
Hey, what, Joe, you're not the only one that had trouble with physics. I can tell. I don't know if you all remember Mr. McClanahan. He's the one that taught physics when I was in high school, so I really didn't learn anything. But when I got off to school, it was a different matter. Randall, thank you so much for helping put this on. And Joe, thank you for all your comments today. You know, we didn't get a chance to hear a lot of the things. Joe mentioned a few of them. He talked about the flags. Joe's responsible for the flags we see on the Veterans Day. And he talked about the flooding in downtown Ringgold, and Joe was instrumental, as he mentioned, in trying to solve that problem. He also, as a part of that, and I don't know if it was prisoners or who, but cleaned the snagged the creek and cleaned out all the trees and everything so that the water wouldn't be backed up and cause flooding in Ringgold. It really helped. The clearing of the creek, when you did all that, had to come and clear the creek, it really helped the flooding in Ringgold. And then all the improvements that have been made to the water system, the sewer system, and so many things in Ringgold that the city had to deal with. Joe was right in the middle of all that, and so.
And building our industrial base.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
so-
Yeah. And all the time, Joe was trying to save money.